the most exhausting feature and barrier to having autism and ADHD and trauma is that if you are like me, you are a highly capable, intelligent human being in certain areas, but then in other areas, like filling out a 2-page form to adopt a cat, you just can't do it. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Today, my plan is to just break down what's going on with issues of lucidity from multiple different perspectives of psychology and neuroscience and neurobiology and spirituality, because I find that when I understand a subject, an issue from many different facets, it makes a much more multidimensional image that helps me understand what's actually happening, which is very different to what I find a lot of autistic and ADHD people might struggle with in society, which is the issue of things being very one-dimensional. When we are talking about issues with lucidity, we are saying that sometimes we are receiving huge conflicting thoughts from our mind, whether it is about a really important or not important topic. It could be that you want to buy muffin liners so that you can make cupcakes for your child's birthday, but also you are aware that the muffin liners are actually lined with silicone and they're not going to be biodegradable and they're bad for the environment. And both values are being held to you at once, that there's a functionality purpose and there's also an environmental purpose. And you can't consciously figure out which thing to do, because the key here is people don't actually often consciously figure out those problems. Everything's actually supposed to be communicating in the background, and then you get served the option that is best for you, and that's what you go off of. But when you are struggling with autism or ADHD, at least if you are the way that I am, the problem is that none of this communication in the background is happening. So all of the information is getting served to you to make the choice, and all of it tends to look like it is very equal in value. So now that we understand what conflicting mind is, from a psychology perspective, if you like Jung, we might call this conflicts of the psyche, or the different archetypes that go on in a human. They aren't integrated with each other. So, the lover saying do this and the hero saying protect the environment, or something like that. If we go on the neuroscience perspective, as far as I'm concerned, every psyche and archetype, and even Greek mythological god, represents a different brain region. So the issue is not that your psyches aren't communicating, it's that your prefrontal cortex and your limbic system aren't communicating effectively. They're both serving you different information. On a more granular level, what this is that your cells are firing out of rhythm. And also there might not be wiring for these two brain regions or two psyches to communicate with each other, as if they're supposed to be able to write letters to each other, but they can't do it. There's no they don't know each other's postal box. So instead they're all just sending their letters to you to deal with. And it's very complicated because they're supposed to be doing this in the background. But because the cells are firing out of rhythm, the information's not getting passed properly to each other. The reason that the cells are firing out of rhythm, if we go a level deeper to neurobiology, is because your bioelectric energy is imbalanced. If certain brain regions are getting a lot of electricity sent to them, they're sending out a lot more messages really quickly. This would be called like a high beta brainwave. They're sending out a lot of information, whereas other cells can't keep up with that pace, and they maybe aren't getting enough electricity to be able to share their own messages well. So everything's kind of a cacophony in your head. And if it was a harmony, it would all happen in the background. But because it is a cacophony, it all gets served to you. This, in a spiritual perspective, we would call a low state of consciousness. This is why sometimes you can act really efficiently and really capable and have super clear thinking, because that's what's happening when you have a high state of consciousness, when your bioelectric field is coherent, when the cells are talking the way they're supposed to. You have high consciousness. But when everything is a cacophonous mess, you have a low state of consciousness. If you need to, you could call this being low frequency or low vibrational energy, but I don't like those terms because they sound like they are sciencey, but they're completely wrong. But I understand that they represent an idea, so I'm still saying that that is how it relates to all of these perspectives. From a spiritual perspective, again, what we're struggling with is kind of an issue of non-duality, which is that often when we are autistic or ADHD, we might perceive we are receiving the 5 different options in our head of the way that we could react to the situation or everyone's different perspectives. And it is so overwhelming because we understand on a fundamental level, or we might understand on a fundamental level, that they are all equally valid. So how the heck do we make a choice? This is a paralysis that comes with being in non-duality. This is different than we might not be able to make a choice because our feelings are all over the place. That, again, is different than my original example of being able to fill out a form to adopt a cat. I can't do that because when I read a question, I see, the 7 different ways that question could be interpreted, and I don't actually have enough information to know how I'm supposed to answer it. So again, I get lost in all of the different options. Gaining discernment, the ability to tell which action is going to be best for the situation that we're in and which one will guide us forward, is something that comes at a higher consciousness level. We can't just pretend that we have discernment. We can't just blindly choose something. So how do we raise that consciousness level? How do we get those brain regions to start talking to each other? And it takes integration. The easiest way to understand integration is actually if you do a lot more movement with your body, whether it is exercise or Tai Chi or yoga, whatever it is. Because when you're activating different parts of your body, when you're activating, the need to balance, you are activating different regions of your brain, and you're getting them to learn how to talk to each other more and to get on the same page, which is different than if you're just sitting on the computer all day doing your work. You are only using, say, one region of your brain. So it's getting all of the power and the other regions aren't. So then later when you need to go do something that integrates them, there's this power imbalance. So when you go and do a physical activity, it helps to level out that power. This is the same with why we meditate, why we do Wim Hof breathing. All of these beautiful things are really great for us. This video was really about commiserating on this struggle that we have and understanding the struggle that we have, of that sometimes we can think so clearly and sometimes we can't. And that part of us that can think really clearly can feel so frustrated and downtrodden about life, because if all of our brain could be like that, we could do so much more. And that part of the brain knows that, but it can't make up for all of the parts that are not integrated and are struggling. We have to do the hard work of learning how to get through those foggy, tangled zones. And they are always going to hold us back to some extent, unless our zone of mastery is so awesome that, it can earn all the money we need to make up for all of the struggling areas, and we can just pay someone else to do that. That would be great, but not all of us can do that, because in order to turn our zone of mastery into a highly profitable career that's valuable for other humans, there are a lot of little barriers in the way that are low consciousness, tangled energy barriers that we're struggling to get through. And if I had one wish for society at this moment in time, it would be for society to understand that they're losing so much value economically and socially and relationally in neurodivergent and mental health struggling people, because there aren't systems there to help us bridge those gaps in a meaningful way. If you're interested in learning about the way that I uniquely integrate different brain regions that are conflicting, by kind of taking off all of the rules and sitting in chaos for a little bit and then adding them back in, drop a comment and I can make a video about that. Other than that, I hope you have a really great day, because being neurodivergent is not easy, but the world is still a beautiful place and you are still a beautiful person.